that NIL, the portal has killed the Cinderella run?
Well, I've really enjoyed watching our entire team that separated. When you see the number of guys, and we knew it in practice, our backups were really, really good. And then obviously Elijah and Nelly and Vlad, they're such competitors that impact winning and make those around them better. So just them being in new situations it's been fun to watch, and we all stay in really close contact. We're in group chats. We follow each other closely, so it's been a lot of fun. The second part, I don't think Cinderella's dead. I think she's probably not going to be as making visits as frequently as she did before. I look at it like this. We lost a few players at FAU early on, and one left before we thought he was an all-league player. And we're obviously disappointed. Everyone's upset. And my response was always, hey, we get paid to coach basketball, to do the best we can. If they decide to leave, then we got to support them. Now, what we have to do a better job of is making sure we keep these guys long enough to be all-conference. And then if they leave, then that's just part of it. But we can't lose them before they're going to be all-conference or all-conference level players. So, I think it's just going to be a group that kind of emerges out of nowhere. And even in our case, we'd had the year before, we were really good, but we'd had injuries. We lost games we shouldn't have lost. And so that kept our guys probably from being recruited as aggressively because we just weren't on the same stage. So a lot went into that, a lot of layers to it. But I don't think Cinderella's dead, especially when we see how good of basketball is being played at Division II level, especially when you look at, Josh Schertz is a close friend, Ben McCollum's a good friend, Jim Crutchfield down at Nova. Those guys move up, and they're good basketball players. So I think it's just going to look different.
Third row here on the left on the aisle.
Coach Chris Ballas at the Wolverine on 3. The way they use Broom offensively, Auburn, can you just talk about how unique it is and how you have to be prepared defensively without giving away state secrets?
Yeah, I think we're all aware at how lethal he is on the block and getting to where he wants to get to and drawing fouls. And he's added a three-point shot, and then he's a very good passer, and he kind of quarterbacks their offense. So he's a challenge on a number of levels. We actually recruited Janai aggressively at FAU, and there were 4 big guys in the same year in South Florida, and at that time we couldn't oversign, and Giancarlo Rosado committed before Broom. We begged him to wait until the spring. He wanted to go ahead and get it over with, so he committed to Morehead State. So I can't imagine if he was on our FAU teams as well. But he's a good basketball player. He's always been a guy that just produced. He's been effective even before anyone knew who he was. He was getting doubles every night against high-level players. So we just got to make everything tough. We got to challenge his catches. We got to push him off a step or two. Just make life difficult for him.
We've got 2 on the back row on the left. Let's go first in the middle of the back row.
Yeah, Dusty Bob Wadowski, Detroit News. Last time you lost a game, obviously an infamous game or famous game, whatever, against Michigan State, but you said after there that you have to get to that level of toughness and culture and everything else. You haven't lost since then. What changed so quickly after that?
Renewed commitment by our players to look ourselves in the mirror and realize we have to do this, this, and this to be better. And credit the staff. They challenged our guys in practice, and our players responded. We changed and granted, we had 5 games in 14 days, so we really weren't practicing. We were getting a little bit loose. We were getting away from what made us us, but we just felt like we kind of just got to get through this stretch. So we felt like once that happened, we had a week to practice. We had a week to kind of regroup, refocus. And when you have good players who they care about each other, they want to do better, usually if you just point them in the right direction, they go with it, and they embraced the physical toughness. The things we worked on in practice, they embraced it, and therefore they made a jump. And then, I think just the rest also helped, just not having so many games.
On the aisle in the back row.
Clayton Safey with the Wolverine. Coach, you talked about maybe you guys focused a little bit too much on the regular season title back then, but now underseeded, the edge that you talked about coming into last week. Do you feel like this team plays a little bit better with that chip on its shoulder as an underdog?
Probably. When you look at where we all came from, none of us were in the McDonald's game. None of us were in the up-and-coming coaches list. And so, yeah, probably it's probably just who we are. We have a chip on our shoulder, and maybe because of our positioning where we were, maybe we lost that chip. I don't know. It's obviously resulting, but anytime we don't win a championship, I'm going to look back and think I should have did this different. I maybe made the same decisions along the way. But nonetheless, yeah, I think we have a group that embraces that chip on our shoulder and that underdog role.
Far right on the back row.
Brendan Quinn from The Athletic. Dusty, can you recount your first time seeing Danny on film and does it like swing open doors of imagination of what was possible with kind of his weird skill set?
Absolutely. Obviously, the first thing we look at in the portal is offense and physical traits and winning and whatnot. And yeah, as soon as we watched Danny, we knew we could make it work offensively. We just had to make sure that it would work defensively. And to be honest, the first time I watched him, I thought he's more physical than I imagined from just I'd watched him a few times on television, and you're flipping through and Yale's playing Princeton or whatever, and they're both well coached, and so you just kind of want to take a peek at it. So, but I thought at first glance, this guy's more physical than I thought. He has better lateral quickness than I would assume of a 7-footer in the Ivy League. And so then I immediately called and texted the guys that were going to be on staff and said, hey, do you mind watching one or two games? Pick out the Kansas game or the Gonzaga game. Let's pick out the games with high major athletes, and let's just really watch and try to, I guess, predict whether he can guard those guys or he can't. And Coach Boynton, Coach Church, Coach Williams, and all the guys that we knew were going to be in the fold all said the same thing, yeah, he can do it. And so I said, okay, so I'm not crazy, and they all were as convicted as I was. No, we can make this work.
Two questions on the left side, first and the second row.
Coach Jerry Humphrey III, AL.com. You and Bruce Pearl both have connections to the state of Indiana. Will this be you guys' first time crossing paths, and what is it like, battling out on this stage of the tournament?
It's not our first time crossing paths. I was sitting out as a Division II player at Oakland City. We played in USI's tournament when Coach Pearl had the Screaming Eagles at the top of college basketball, and they were their university was 20 miles apart. Actually, in that tournament, if I remember correctly, it was Central Oklahoma State, who had Eddie Robinson played there, an NBA player. There were some really, really good teams, and then there was us. So very familiar with the program he built there. And then his dad, when I took the FAU job, I was out trying to round up fans one at a time. And so I'd go to breakfast with old guys, coaches, and lunches. And his dad was in some groups that would go, it'd be former players from the Celtics from the 30s or whatever, and they would meet and talk ball for lunch. And so I'd go have breakfast with those guys and have lunch. So, and then Stephen Pearl and I, we've crossed paths for years recruiting. So extremely familiar with Coach Pearl. And then when I was assistant at Florida was when he came into the league. So there's been a lot of, I guess, a few degrees of separation with Coach Pearl, but couldn't have more respect for the way he's been able to sustain winning, build programs wherever he's been, and be at the top of college basketball.
Far left, back row.
Deshaun Tate from three-point conversion here in Atlanta, Coach. Obviously, all 4 coaches in this region have Final Four experience. From your personal experience when you went through it, is there anything that you're kind of learning, lessons or things that you implement from that time that you're bringing into this game and kind of sharing that with your guys on what they should be able to expect this weekend at all?
Yeah, a big part of it is simply minimizing distractions, the tickets, the fans, the people coming from everywhere, just wanting to be a part of it, and it's all healthy. I mean, we want to share this experience with as many people that we love and care about, but there's also an element of this is that we have to focus on the work, we have to focus on what we've done to get us to this point. And in addition to especially a group that we're not supposed to be here, so we're not content just being one of 16, or we're not content competing for an Elite Eight, that we still have. We feel like we can compete with anyone in the country, so why would we come here and just be complacent and content that we're here? Let's keep our head down, just focused on the work and see where it takes us, and hopefully we look up in a couple weeks and we're really, really proud of what we did in the rearview mirror, but when we look at it now, it's just, it's a waste of time. So we're really just, and for me personally, I was in awe the first time, like, wow, this is happening. And it was so different because you weren't at Michigan. But now it's kind of like, we have another 4-team tournament in Atlanta. We've got to prepare for this game, and we've got to be ready for this, and this. And so just, it's allowed me to separate the emotion, the excitement from it.
3 on the right, first in the back row.
Hey, Coach, Gunter Schroeder with USA Today. I wanted to ask you, you have 2 guys that know how to beat Auburn maybe a little bit more than most people. Obviously, you recruited Trey from there after 2 years at Auburn, and Danny just beat them in the NCAA tournament last year with Yale. So what is insight from both sides of the aisle, from a guy that played there and a guy that beat them in a tournament setting, kind of give you when you're preparing for such an elite opponent like Auburn?
Well, obviously Trey has a lot of insight with his teammates, with the system, and all that. But Coach Pearl's going to change his calls. They're going to have different names, and so it's going to be very similar to every other scout. As far as Danny knowing how to beat Auburn, if you play a team and if we could beat the Hawks 1 out of 100 times, it doesn't mean that I know how to beat Quinn Snyder and the Hawks. So, but obviously, Danny did say, hey, a couple times against our press, we tried to do this. A couple times against this switch, we tried to do this. And they're really, really good insight. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to execution. And I'm not sure any of us know how to beat Auburn other than play really, really good, sound, poised basketball for about 80 possessions, hopefully.
Down front here on the right.
Robbie LaStella, Bracketeer.org. In today's age of college basketball, it can be tough to get a team to gel with a first-year staff right away. You guys haven't had an issue with that. What would you say your keys to success in doing that were, and was there maybe a defining moment where you saw it all come together?
Yeah, I think that number one, we've tried to intentionally choose like-minded people, and then like-minded people are typically gravitate towards those that are like them. So, I've said this in recruiting actually in the last couple of days in Zooms and whatever the case, that a-holes don't like us and we don't like them. So we just naturally go after guys who have a lot of character and are great people, and guys that we want around our families and we want to have lifetime relationships with. So it's just kind of happened. I don't want to say even unintentionally, because it's kind of the fabric of who we are. But for whatever reason, we find guys, they're like-minded, and we're all on the same page, and we know we all need each other.
Pat on the fourth row on the right
Hey,
side.
Dusty, Pat Forty from Sports Illustrated. I'm wondering if you've ever counted for Vlad between screens, rebounds, post offense, defense, how many collisions he has a game, and kind of how he's maintained his ability to play through all that.
It's a great question, Pat, and I've been disappointed in Vlad, because sometimes I feel like he conserves. When you watch Vlad in the last 5 minutes of any game since I've had him, he puts his body through torture every day of the year, and there's still a different level in the last 5 minutes. And he even told one of the assistants recently that in the first half he flashes a lot more, and a lot of his turnovers are on the perimeter in the first half. And he basically said, look, there's so many collisions, there's so much contact, I try not to use it all up in the first half for that reason. So that's pretty observant. But yeah, Vlad, he finds contact. He wants to help his teammates. So the screening, the ducking in, all the stuff that comes with playing with physicality, helping your teammates is important to him. And Vlad's just such a pleaser and an unselfish player that he's going to do whatever his teammates need. But Vlad for 35 minutes and Vlad for the last 5 he almost turns into a superhero the last 5 minutes with the things he does as far as offensive rebounding, running the floor, putting us in position to win. And that's a sign of a competitor. When the stakes are heightened, he elevates his play.
We've got 2 on the far left, and then we'll see what time we have left.
Dusty, Carlos Menars, Detroit Free Press. Trey's been a little touchy about talking about his experience at Auburn with us, at least. How has he been with you talking about his experience? And could there be a little bit more of that inside, this guy likes to go to his left in this situation, like that really inside intel that you can't get from a scouting report?
Yeah, but even the player that Trey shared minutes with last year is playing for Alabama right now. The Purcell's different. Obviously, we all know Janai Broom. He's got a little bit of insight, and Baker and those guys and Mazzara, but he hasn't. From my understanding, he's very appreciative of his Auburn experience. They won. It's got him to where he is now as a person. So no, he's never been negative at all about BP or his teammates or anyone. I think it's just he needed a change, and that's not always unhealthy. I said that the other day that I was in the transfer portal last year. A lot of these players are in transfer portal. Sometimes change is healthy at different stages of your life, and he just needed a fresh start, and he's found a place where he's been embraced, and he's had a bigger role, and he's certainly produced for us and made big shots and continued to grow. He's getting better day by day, week by week.
Far left on the fourth row.
Dusty, Ken Segura, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. You brought up you being in the portal. That kind of brings the question I had. I think there are people that begrudge athletes for chasing bigger opportunities and more money. I'm curious, what would you say to those critics who don't like the system as it is?
I think every situation is different. literally every single situation is different. Sometimes this might be I know what players make in Finland. I know what players make in Cyprus. I've coached them. They've went there. So there's different situations for everyone. If you're a legit pro prospect, in my opinion, you should go to wherever you think puts you in position to make what the Hawks players make. And so then there are other players where this might be the end of the road. They have, we had a really, really good player at FAU that had another year. He graduated. He didn't want a master's, and we talked about it, and we didn't think there's a whole lot of cartilage left in his knees, and it was probably time for him to go make money back home. And he's having a heck of a career. And if it was today, it would be, hey, you might want to go try to capitalize on and make as much money next year as you possibly can, because I was a young coach that struggled to have a down payment on a house. I was a young coach that if your car broke down, it might set you back a little bit. So every situation's different. Different backgrounds. What's your objective when it comes to education? Is education really important to you, or is basketball? You're in college just for basketball. So I don't begrudge anyone. Like I said, when we lost guys before anyone knew who FAU was, my message was always, hey, we get paid to coach basketball, and we're going to do that at the absolute best we can. We're going to pour into these guys, and if they decide this isn't for them, then we're going to give them a hug. We're going to cheer like heck for them going forward. Is it going to sting? Yes, because we want to win. We want to win every single night. But I'm also realistic to everyone has a different background and their situation, and it looks a lot different than everyone else's. So.
Last question on the back row on the left.
Bob Wadowski, Detroit News. I'm interested in what else has changed during this hot streak for you guys. Turnovers, L.J. Kaysen has had more of a role. If you had to pinpoint a few things that have sparked your guys from kind of a down point late in the year, what would it be?
Obviously, the turnovers, we've been much more consistent, not turning the ball over. I think our guards have done a better job, and I don't know the numbers and data, but my eyes tell me our guards have done a better job of defensive rebounding, which has helped our transition offense. We just look like a much more connected group. I know really since the Michigan State game that you're referring to, since then, when I just sit down and look on the court, I feel like it's a group that's just came together and they're trying to win. There's no there's no situations where he's trying to get this shot, or he's trying to score, or he's trying to do this, or he's trying to do things he's not very good at. It just, when I watch us, it's 5 guys out doing whatever they can to in their function to help the team win, and so that's it. And I think every team has a stretch like that where everyone's consumed with one thing, winning. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late, and sometimes it's fleeting, but it's really nothing more than that right now. I look at it and I see our guys doing what they do really, really well organically and just trying to make it work.